So if he is talking about expanding just the current ability, if someone's driving over, they have a tomato or an orange in the back, that you could also search someone for drugs. Is that a simple change that could be effected?
Well, each state has the capacity to determine what sort of policy objectives it wants to achieve, as long as they are not for a discriminatory burden of a protectionist kind. This is Section 92 of the Constitution that's being discussed. And our Constitution has enabled states to regulate things for their own territory, as long as the purpose is not in order to protect their state's trade. So that's the issue that's going on here. And I can explain that a little bit more if you...
Well, so it's not just to protect trade. So if they're trying to keep out something that's illegal and that's their purpose, that could be possible, because we're not talking about protecting a drug trade, obviously.
No, that's right. So if the state says, we have had real problems with drugs and we want to regulate that, the court has said that is possible as long as when assessing that, we determine that that is all that you're really seeking to do. And that then becomes a question of evidence and some analysis of what it is that they're doing. Is it proportionate to that end? Is what is necessary to achieve that policy end with drugs, for instance?
So that could be an issue if the plan was we're going to search every single truck or large van that's coming across the border.
Yes. Then
the proportionate question comes into it. What do we know about what courts have decided in the past as to whether that could happen?
Yeah, so the courts are really saying we have to assess it case by case, or policy by policy or law by law. You can't just say, broadly speaking, we're going to say yes or no. It is a question of assessing whether really what's going on is some sort of discriminatory burden. So in some ways that means that we're going to have to wait to see what the McGowan government decides they want to do and then assess it on those terms, and then ultimately it would be for a court to assess.
Right. So vehicle checks, there's a caveat, there's a possibility.
Yes.
Initially he wasn't ruling out using the so-called G2G pass system. Yes. This basically means anybody that wants to go to WA has to apply and they can be denied the opportunity to go to WA.
Yes, yes.
How would this go?
Well, this is really interesting. The question, I guess, that the court would have to assess is that extreme step of making every single person who's coming in proportionate to drug policy. We can see how it's proportionate to COVID because of the notion of the health spread issue in terms of COVID being such, a pernicious reality. But are drugs of the same proportion? And would a court say that every single person would need to be assessed in order for them to achieve their drug policy? Now, that would require some sort of expert analysis, and that would be the material that the court would be looking at. But we also know that the court is loath to really interfere too much with policy. So it's that balancing act that they're playing in terms of protecting constitutional principles of free trade against the right of each state to work out what is in the state's best interest for its own policy across any issue.
If the WA government, though, were to try to use the G2G process, and they said this is about drugs and every single person, even someone flying in, could be denied by a bureaucrat getting in, that would appear to be a very heavy, difficult thing to prove.
It does speak of overreach because are drugs of such a sufficient danger to the state that you are, essentially also going to have a flow-on effect in terms of the freedom of trade that would be affected by something like that.
So, all right, so that seems the first part, possibly. The second part, very difficult, we might say.
Yes.
There's even a question, is there not, on whether the current COVID border laws would survive another test. A lot of people were of the opinion that perhaps the question put, if you like, by Clive Palmer wasn't the right one. Mark McGowan says they've decided, the High Court's decided the safety measure's fair enough. There's a caveat on that one.
There is, because it was safe at that point of time. I think that's the real issue. These are not decisions that cover all the field. They're really saying, well, at that point of time, that was proportionate to the health needs of the time. But what if we do, and we pray that we get to the position where with immunisation and other aspects of protecting against a state health epidemic, that extremity may no longer be necessary, and a court might say at a later date that is no longer the case.
So let's look at the vaccine rollout happens by June. All the vulnerable West Australians, health workers and so on, are all vaccinated with what's seen as quite an effective vaccine.
Yes.
If WA at that stage wants to have the border up, there could easily be a challenge.
Another challenge.
That says no, you can't
This is no
have the
longer
border up.
proportionate, exactly, because it is all about proportionality. The High Court, that is the clear message from the High Court about proportionality to the end, the public policy end. And if there's an overreach on that, then it's more likely to be characterised as protectionist and seeking to undermine Section 92 of the Constitution.
Professor Kim Rubenstein from the University of Canberra.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today.
Terrific, Tom.